Good morning. This is Dr. Andy thinking about another one of his students. Why do I care, Dr. Andy? Well, because at the end of these videos I include lessons about what we can learn from the enterprise of teaching. So I hope you'll stick around for that. I'm thinking today about my student Nancy. Nancy was somewhat older than some of her fellow undergraduate, mostly English majors, in Introduction to the Principles of Literary Criticism, Plato to Coleridge. I taught this class somewhere around the year 2000. It was around 2000 when I taught English 110A. It was a literary theory class to Nancy and a bunch of other memorable students, some of whom will come up in conversation later in this series. Make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss a fascinating video. Nancy did particularly well in the class. I'm sure she earned an A. I could check my grade book to confirm that. But she presented herself as an A student. Thoughtful responses to questions, etc., etc. It was a large class, maybe 75 students. That's large to me anyway. Then years later, I started working as a quiz master at a restaurant called Bistro 33, and who I considered the head server was my old favorite student, Nancy. Boy, Nancy was sharp when it came to her understanding of wines. Nancy presented herself as if maybe she didn't come from money, but she came from people who understood the cultural importance of wine pairings. That was my impression anyway. I can give you some evidence of this. I just checked to see some of my past Facebook conversations with Nancy. And here's one of my favorites. Dear Nancy, this is from 2011. Kate, that's my wife Kate, you might have picked up on that by now. Kate really appreciated that you split her table's bill 6 ways, even though it's against the rules. She and her book group really enjoyed themselves tonight, largely due to the excellent service they received. Perhaps equally largely was all that drinking of fine wine. Years later, Nancy messaged me to say that she was thinking of leaving Bistro 33 and moving over to De Vere's Irish Pub, where I had also moved. When was that? That was about 2011. I moved from Bistro 33 to De Vere's Irish Pub for my quiz mastering. Oh look, Dr. Andy actually mentioned quiz mastering in a channel purportedly called Diary of a Quiz Master. When do we get to the quizzes, Dr. Andy? Hold your horses. I'm trying to figure out this YouTube thing and these one-take videos about my students. I've got 365 of them to get through. I'll ask for your patience. Anyway, so she said she was thinking of working at De Vere's, and I said, Dear Nancy, this is in November of 2011, I would love to have you work at De Vere's, though your doing so would effectively remove one of the last reasons for me to visit Bistro 33. Isn't that the truth? I think that De Vere's has finished its hiring, but obviously I have connections with the owners and would be glad to recommend you. And then she wrote me back. I sent her my phone number. I said, here's my email address, just as it was when you were first in my class 15 years ago. And then here's the message that I sent to the general manager of De Vere's. Hi, Josie. My friend and former student Nancy Swim told me that she plans to apply to the assistant manager position. I've known Nancy since she was my student about 15 years ago, and I think she'd be an incredible pickup for the pub. She does an extraordinary job with customer service, and she has an impressive knowledge of food and drink. If you interview her, make sure to ask her some hard wine questions to see what I mean. Let me know if a more formal letter of reference would be helpful. Best, Andy. So Nancy ended up not working for De Vere's, but we did stay in touch and we ran into each other from time to time. And then during the pandemic, I think it was 2022, I was into genealogy and discovering more and more about my ancestors. And I questioned out loud to my friend Nancy, do you suppose that we are related? And she was intrigued by this. And I said, send her a message at the end of 2022. Hi, Nancy, if you could provide the names and dates of your most recently departed ancestors, I could let you know precisely how we are related. What fun, Andy. And then she says, sends along that information. And I sent her back on that same day, that same evening, I sent her back this. So I discovered that Robert Marcus Houghton, your great-grandfather, is my 9th cousin once removed. Our mutual ancestors, John and Margaret Todd, were born in England at the end of the 16th century, and they moved to Woburn, Massachusetts. Most of the children were born in England, so I imagine that they were wealthy. Good morning. The two parents both died in the 1650s. How about that, cousin? And then I went back and discovered some additional mutual ancestors that we had, all the way back, according to the website Family Search, all the way back to Adam and Eve. I think I'd have to get Henry Louis Gates involved to see if there's any truth to that. But that's not the topic of this conversation. The topic is this. Nancy, she was a wonderful student and a good friend and an amazing waitress. I always felt like she was classing up the joint whenever she walked into it, and I felt lucky to have her as a friend. She also had a sort of confidence and smoothness that you would hope for from a server in a restaurant. She knew how to make people feel comfortable. She was also a deep thinker with strong principles, and I've enjoyed seeing her posts, many of them of a political nature, in the ensuing decades, the 25 years since she was first my student. So, Nancy, if you're watching this, I hope you're continuing to do well. I appreciate all the kindnesses that you showed my family during our visits to your restaurant. And I thank you for being one of the 365 students who we are featuring in Dr. Andy's UC Davis Student Remembrances as we march right up to my date of retirement, July 1st, 2027. If you're enjoying these videos, and I don't see why you wouldn't be, then give it a like so that someone else will find one, and subscribe so that you'll never miss an opportunity to find out about the wisdom of my students. That's all for today. Check out one of these videos popping up above me. The algorithm says you'll enjoy it, and I think we've learned by now not to argue with the algorithm. Bye-bye.